Greetings, my name's Arthur Lavin. I'm a pediatrician in a two-doctor practice in Beechwood, Ohio, a proud member of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and of the great state chapter of the Ohio AAP. I've been very pleased to share with you some of our experiences in this office in administering COVID vaccine. So we embarked on administering COVID vaccine when the vaccine was approved for 12 to 15-year-olds a few months ago. And these are the steps that I recall that we went through to do that. The first step is to register as a COVID vaccine administrator with the Ohio Department of Health. You can go to their webpage and do that online or call them for directions to do so. The second step is estimating how many doses you want to give. At the time we gave this, there were about 6 doses per vial, and the minimum number of vials they could ship was 5. So we didn't want to order any vaccine unless we had about a minimum of 30 people or a multiple of 30 people booked, and we would only book people in multiples of 30. If, let's say, we had 30 people booked and only 5 more were calling, we would refer them to pharmacies or hospitals or other places to get the COVID vaccine. Once you know the number of vaccine doses that you want, then the third step is to go ahead and order it. Now, when the vaccine arrives, you have to be very careful to record the temperature on the delivery box to prove that the vaccine, of course, all these doses currently are Pfizer, and they need to be stored in transit at about minus 80 degrees Celsius. So you have to demonstrate that the cold chain was intact by recording that temperature. They often come with the familiar Ohio Department of Health temperature probes that allow you to do that. And then the way you document then that the cold chain was intact is to download the data on the temperature probe. At the time that we did the vaccines this summer for the 12 to 15-year-olds, we were advised that we could store the Pfizer vaccine in our freezer that we use for varicella for up to a month, and when ready to be used, we could thaw it out in our refrigerator where it could be stored for up to 7 days. I would strongly advise that for the 5 to 11-year-olds that we all consult with ODH guidelines and Pfizer guidelines for storage of the vaccine for the 5 to 11-year-olds. Those 1 month in the freezer and 7 days in the refrigerator guidelines may change for the 5 to 11-year-olds. But the main point is, once you register as a vaccine administrator for COVID with ODH, estimate the number of doses that you're going to be giving, order the doses, then you need to know your storage requirements and store the vaccine properly. The Pfizer vaccine comes in a vial that looks something like this. And at the time that we were given this vial, we also got a box of diluent, which is sterile 0.9% saline. Do not use 0.9% normal saline from anyone else but Pfizer. Use the diluent that they provide. And on the day that you're going to be giving your vaccine, and not before, you want to, there's 2 steps to prepare the syringe to give the vaccine. The first step is take the diluent and add the specified amount of normal saline from the diluent to the Pfizer antigen bottle. That will give you a certain number of doses from this vial. For the 12 and up, that was 6 doses in 1 vial. There will be a different direction for the 5 to 11-year-olds who we anticipate will be given 0.1 ml rather than the 0.3 ml that the 12 and ups were given. But in any case, the first step in preparing for giving the shot on the day that you give the COVID vaccine is to add the diluent to the antigen bottle. And then you draw up the doses from the antigen bottle. Now, this is different than any other vaccine that we did. And the reason is that the bottle had originally been designed for 12 and up to provide 5 doses. But it turns out that a certain few drops of vaccine are wasted every time we pull up vaccine in a syringe, because you'll notice that there's a bit of air in the hub here and also the hub of the needle. And so what was figured out was if you got special syringes where the plunger is V-shaped rather than flat, and you have special needles with no airspace. You can get no dead space syringes and vaccines. This is not a dead space syringe, but you can get special dead space vaccines and needles, which ODH supplies with your COVID vaccine, and you can eke out an extra 0.3 ml dose from one of these bottles, rendering this now a 6-dose vial instead of a 5-dose vial. But you need a special syringe and needle to do that. And the other thing that this means is that you can't waste a drop of the vaccine. So when you add the amount of diluent required into here, you increase the pressure in here. So if you add, let's say, 1.8 mLs of saline into the antigen bottle of the COVID, you've got to take 1.8 ml of air out. Otherwise, when you go to take your first vaccine dose out, it'll spray around the needle and you won't get the maximum number of doses that you need. So you want to follow directions very carefully in adding the diluent and releasing the pressure. And then when you draw up the doses, I recommend that you, of course, you have to tilt. There are directions for mixing it and then tilting this when you prepare it, which I won't go over today. But you want to insert the needle with the vial upright. Then you'll have to turn it upside down in order to withdraw the recommended dosage. But before you pull the needle out, I recommend tilting the vial upright again so that when you pull the needle out, if there's any air hissing one way or the other, no vaccine material hisses out in that moment. Now, once you've drawn the requisite amount into your syringe, of course, you can put the dead space needle on the syringe, and this is ready to give. I would keep these in the fridge during the day of the vaccination, and we would typically draw up the vaccine material for each session. So if I had 30 doses in the morning, I would draw them up in the morning. If I had 30 doses in the afternoon, I would draw them up in the afternoon. In terms of the mixing, I guess I will mention that when you add the diluent, you're supposed to invert the bottle 10 times, not shake, but invert. And when you're ready to pull up the vaccine, you invert it again. But the directions for mixing, I think for the 5 to 11-year-olds, there's going to be a different amount of diluent that you put into the bottle. There may actually be different size bottles of antigen for the 5 to 11-year-olds. So I'm not going to give specific directions about that. That's all very clearly laid out when you get your package. But the basics will remain the same. That is, you have to register as a COVID immunizer with ODH. You should estimate the number of doses you want to give, and that estimate should take into account the minimum number of doses that are shipped to you with each order. Book your patients in groupings of that minimum so you don't waste vaccine. Then you order your vaccine. When it arrives, you follow the storage requirements for how long it can stay in the freezer before you use it, and how long it can be kept in the refrigerator when you're getting ready to use it, and how long it has to be in the refrigerator to thaw before you can use it. And then finally, follow the directions for the 5 to 11-year-olds, which is going to be different than 12 and up, for how much diluent you add to the type of antigen bottle and how many doses you can draw out of each bottle, which will again inform how many doses are in a minimum shipment, which will dictate how many doses you order. I guess the main pain points, the things that we felt we had to pay the most attention to, were first of all making sure we were registered. That's a process we weren't familiar with, that we had to familiarize ourselves with. Figuring out the logistics of minimum number of doses. We don't do that for Tdap or MMR. We have a regular flow and we just order in that flow. This is not that way. You have to actually guess how many you're going to be using pretty carefully. And then spending the time. It takes time to carefully dilute the antigen and to draw it into the syringe in a way that doesn't waste even a drop of vaccine. So those are things you want to pay special attention to, as well as the unique requirements of storage for the vaccine. Having said all that, anyone who gives immunizations should be able to do all these steps. I wish you all well. It's a great thing to give a COVID vaccine to children, and I wish you luck in becoming a COVID immunization administrator like us. Thank you.